Having a to-do list with a million tasks can be exhausting. And on top of that, when you're prone to anxiety, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed with tasks, chores, events, people to contact, and other external influences in your life. So what can you do to stop this from happening? And how can you cope with the stress and overwhelm of your to-do list anxiety, upcoming events, and external stressors? If you struggle with to-do list anxiety from the million tasks you have to do, then this episode is perfect for you. Welcome to Calmly Coping. I'm your host, Tati Garcia. I'm a licensed therapist and a high-functioning anxiety coach. Calmly Coping is the podcast for people who struggle with anxiety and high-functioning anxiety. Each Wednesday, you'll hear informative episodes with actionable tips about decreasing anxiety, adopting a healthy mindset, and managing your time and energy so you can live a calm and balanced life. Let's get started. This is episode number 42, 5 Ways to Stop Your To-Do List Anxiety. Welcome back, and welcome if you're a first-time listener. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do you ever feel overwhelmed with the amount of tasks you have to complete? Does your to-do list anxiety make you feel frazzled and frustrated? When you're prone to anxiety, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed with everything you have to do. And the reason this happens is that you're often planning into the future. A hallmark of anxiety is the constant worrying and obsessing over things that could happen or trying to plan for each possible scenario before it happens. The problem with this is that it's exhausting. Constantly planning and predicting the future is often fruitless and cumbersome, and it actually magnifies your stress and anxiety levels because in addition to the actual task or event, now you're overthinking things on top of it. So what can you do to stop this from happening, and how can you cope with your to-do list anxiety? I'm going to be sharing 5 tips today with you so that you can stop the overwhelm of an overflowing to-do list. Tip number 1 is write things down. Tasks swirling around in your head magnify overthinking, especially abstract thought, which just puts you in your head more. So get things out concretely in writing or typing so that you know they're there when you're ready to address them. And instead of having your reminders written down in a million different places, like Post-it notes everywhere, random notes on pieces of paper, phone reminders, notes, etc., put them all in one centralized location. This further decreases your anxiety because you're less likely to forget things and feel like you're pulled all over the place in a million different directions. So it can help to choose whatever method works for you: a planner, a to-do list app like Todoist, a tearaway pad, or a notebook. Make an actionable to-do list of things you want to or have to get done, and plan out the tasks using a realistic timeline. Also, focus on making the tasks actionable and as small as possible. Instead of, for example, let's say if I had the task of getting an entire podcast episode out and published, I break it down into outlining the episode, writing the show notes, recording the episode, editing the episode, and so on. So this leads me to the next tip when it comes to using a realistic timeline is to not overplan. Things often take much longer than you expect, which results in more stress and anxiety. And this is actually a human trait. So we often have a bias where we tend to underestimate the amount of time it takes to do things. So I want you to think of the last time that you planned out tasks that you wanted to get done in a certain day or a certain amount of time and you didn't get to all of them. Was it recently? I'm so incredibly guilty of this. I always underestimate how long something will take, and you think I would have learned by now, but I still struggle with this from time to time. So I'm slowly getting there, and I often double the amount of time I think a task will take so that I can be realistic with my planning. So one way that you can help to prevent this underestimating fallacy that you might be engaged in is to limit yourself to 1 to 3 major tasks per day, and to also double the amount of time that you think a task will actually take when you're planning ahead. Hey, I wanted to take a quick break to tell you about my free quiz to help you determine if you have high-functioning anxiety and how significant it is for you. In this PDF download, I will walk you through a series of simple questions to assess your level of high-functioning anxiety, and then you will also score how you land in the 4 different categories of high-functioning anxiety symptoms. Lastly, you will get personalized resources depending on your results. To download this quiz, you can go to calmlycoping.com/quiz or click on the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode. Tip number 3 is to let go of the shoulds. You are exactly where you should be. In fact, I want you to delete the word should from your vocabulary entirely. That word only creates more stress, pressure, and unrealistic expectations. I want you to stop comparing yourself to others or where you wish you were in life. You're here now, and that's amazing. Seriously, I know it sounds cliche and cheesy, but the more that you live in a fantasy world of what you wish your life looked like and where you are in comparison to others, the more suffering you will experience if that reality doesn't match up with your fantasy. So, anytime that you feel this pressure to be doing more or to get all of these things on your to-do list done or to be this perfect person, put yourself in check. Think of how you might be shoulding on yourself and try to let go of some of the pressure. Accept and love your life. You are moving at your own pace, and that is beautiful. Tip number 4 is to be in the present. And you've probably heard this a million times before, right? The thing is that it can't be said enough. And the reason is because it is so easy to forget, especially when you're prone to anxious thinking. Your brain is often 12 steps ahead and thinking about the future and the what ifs, which are both very far from right now. If you find yourself stressing about the amount of tasks you have to get done or worrying that you will never get to it all, bring your mind back to the present. Remind yourself that you're here right now and you are not superhuman. It might be unrealistic that you get all of these things done right now. Practice being in the present by being mindfully aware. And a quick way to do this is to catch yourself in those moments of obsessing over your to-do list or feeling anxious about everything you have to do and just bringing your attention back to the present. So anytime that you catch yourself in those moments of thinking about the future or over planning or feeling anxious about what you have to do is a victory. Just catching yourself is a super huge victory because this is an opportunity for you to change and choose the way that you want to think. And this is an opportunity for you to intentionally bring your focus back to the present. So thinking about the future and over planning is not a failure, and it's going to happen. But I want you to focus on reframing that to anytime you catch yourself in those moments as a success, because this is an opportunity for you to remember that this is the only moment that you have, as philosophical and profound as it might sound. But anytime you can focus on bringing your attention back to the present, then that is a victory. And tip number 5 is to focus on one thing at a time. I hate to break it to you, but multitasking is a myth. The only thing that multitasking does is make you less efficient at every task you're doing. So stop thinking about the next thing you have to do while running errands, checking your email while you're in a meeting, or mentally rehashing your to-do list while relaxing with a good book. Make a conscious effort to focus on one thing at a time. I know it's hard, but I promise that it helps. And research shows that when people are focused in the present moment, they tend to be happier regardless of what they're doing. A great way to practice focusing on one thing at a time is to minimize distractions. This can include putting your phone on silent when you're working on an important task, telling others to not bother you, and closing additional browser windows or tabs if you're working on a computer. And these are just a few tips. Sometimes life can be hard. I totally feel you, and that's okay. But by implementing a few of the quick tips I spoke about in this episode, I know you will be well on your way to less stress and more calm. Your action tip for this episode is to implement 2 of these 5 tips in the next week. Start small and don't try to implement all of these tips at once. Write down the ones that you want to implement and hold yourself accountable and see if you notice a difference. So just to review the tips again, tip number 1 is to write things down. Tip number 2 is don't overplan. Tip number 3 is to let go of shoulds. Tip number 4 is to be in the present. And tip number 5 is to focus on one thing at a time. So put this into action and let me know how it helps. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can DM me on Instagram at TatianaGLPC or email me at tati@becalmwithtati.com and let me know. And if you found this podcast episode informative, then please leave me a review on iTunes letting me know your thoughts. It really helps me out. While you wait for next week's episode, I have other episodes about decreasing anxiety, adopting a healthy mindset, and managing your time and energy. Thanks so much for tuning in today, and until next time, be calm. Thanks so much for listening. If you like what you heard, please share this episode with a friend, and please subscribe and leave me a review on iTunes. Also, remember to check me out online at calmlycoping.com and connect with me on Instagram at TatianaGLPC. All content here is for informational purposes only. This content does not replace the professional judgment of your own mental health provider. Please consult a licensed mental health professional for all individual questions and issues. Till next time, I'm Tati, and this has been Calmly Coping.